Today on the Word Preacher Podcast, the source, preparation, and the inevitable. I'm Brett Jensen, and this is the Word Preacher Podcast. All right, our Come Follow Me curriculum for this coming week will take us to section 88 in the Doctrine and Covenants, named by Joseph Smith, the olive leaf. We won't get into a ton of detail as to why that nickname exists. It's just a useful thing to remember. Section 88 is like an olive leaf in terms of a bit of peace, a bit of enlightenment that comes from the Lord for us. It's one of the longer sections, but it's got a ton of great stuff, and there is zero chance we can cover it all in this podcast, but we do want to get into a little bit of reading here. Let's talk about verses 6 through 13, which reads as follows. He that ascended up on high, as also he descended below all things, in that he comprehended all things, that he might be in and through all things, the light of truth, which truth shineth. This is the light of Christ, as also he is in the sun, and the light of the sun, and the power thereof by which it was made, as also he is in the moon, and is the light of the moon, and the power thereof by which it was made, and also the light of the stars, and the power thereof by which they were made, and the earth also, and the power thereof, even the earth upon which you stand. The light which shineth, which giveth you light, is through him who enlighteneth your eyes, which is the same light that quickeneth your understandings, which light proceedeth forth from the presence of God to fill the immensity of space, the light which is in all things, which giveth life to all things, which is the law by which all things are governed, even the power of God who sitteth upon his throne, who is in the bosom of eternity, who is in the midst of all things. Okay, so we have a lot of connection of the Lord to a variety of different sources of light and truth, and even ways that you might not expect. When it talks about the sun, he is the light of the sun. He is the light of the moon. That may not match up to your scientific understanding of the processes that we see, that we observe in these celestial bodies. But if we think about it from a different perspective, the perspective of the number of dependencies that human beings have, we think of everything that it takes to make human beings prosper and thrive and survive. I mean, there's a range of gravity that's required. This is, you see people up in International Space Station in zero gravity, and looks like it's fun. They're bouncing around and showing water blobs kind of floating around in space. But it is actually something that is not meant for super long-term living. Astronauts lose bone density, and they have to go through very careful workouts and regimens in order to maintain their bone structure that they would naturally have just in Earth's gravity. Water, obviously, also a requirement, a dependency. This can be either too little or too much water will cause problems for us. That's either drinking or being in. You need just the right amount. And it has to be pure enough. I mean, there may be plenty of water in, a toxic dump site. There may be a lot of H2O molecules, but you might not be able to drink it. I mean, even ocean water is not drinkable by human beings. There's too much salt in it, and that messes with a variety of other things in our systems. We can't use that water, even though there's a lot of water there. Oxygen, obviously also a prerequisite for humans to thrive. And not just any oxygen. I mean, there's plenty of oxygen in the water, but we don't have a mechanism to get it out of the water naturally. We have to use other things. If we are going to extract oxygen from the water, we really depend on it being in the air. And it needs to be relatively protected from other pollutants. And not only that, but we have to have the right air pressure. If it's too great of pressure, that can be crushing. And not enough pressure has its own set of negative consequences. So we have a lot of prerequisites, a lot of dependencies. Of course, I didn't even touch on everything. Nutrition, temperature ranges. And it's important to think about the source of all of the things that has allowed human beings to just live for thousands and thousands of years. Where did that come from? The system that provides all of these essentials was forged by Jesus Christ. So in a very literal way, he is in the light of the sun. It is because of him that all plants go through their photosynthesis process, and all animals can have what they need, and all of the other processes and cycles that we see in the earth that perpetuate human life. The tides, the processes in the moon, also created by him. Our position in the universe among the stars, also given by him. Our first material possessions, some of the first things that human beings actually possessed, property, Adam and Eve, were given coats of skins made by him. The truths of the gospel, the opportunity to be sanctified, all of the things for which earth was created, the purpose behind it all, it's given by him. Now, it's important that we kind of put this in a context, because people are free to do things that kind of don't go along with that purpose. They receive what they want. And the Lord discusses this in this section. Let's look at verses 20 through 25. That bodies who are of the celestial kingdom may possess it forever and ever. For this intent it was made and created, and for this intent they are sanctified. And they who are not sanctified through the law which I have given unto you, even the law of Christ, must inherit another kingdom, even that of a terrestrial kingdom or that of a telestial kingdom. For he who is not able to abide the law of a celestial kingdom cannot abide a celestial glory. And he who cannot abide the law of the terrestrial kingdom cannot abide a terrestrial glory. And he who cannot abide the law of the telestial kingdom cannot abide a telestial glory. Therefore, he is not meet for a kingdom of glory. Therefore, he must abide in a kingdom which is not a kingdom of glory. And again, verily I say unto you, the earth abideth the law of the celestial kingdom, for it filleth the measure of its creation, and transgresseth not the law. So this gives us some insight that by choosing the law that we will follow, we are literally choosing our place in the grand scheme of things. Can you currently abide high laws? And if not, is this your goal, to be able to abide higher laws? Are you striving for that? Do you want to even do that? If you do, seek, and ye shall find. All right, the Lord gives a parable. This is in starting with 51, going to 61. Behold, I will liken these kingdoms unto a man having a field, and he sent forth his servants into the field to dig in the field. And he said unto the first, Go ye and labor in the field, and in the first hour I will come unto you, and ye shall behold the joy of my countenance. And he said unto the second, Go ye also into the field, and in the second hour I will visit you with the joy of my countenance. And also unto the third, saying, I will visit you, and unto the fourth, and so on unto the 12th. And the Lord of the field went unto the first in the first hour, and tarried with him all that hour. And he was made glad with the light of the countenance of his Lord. And then he withdrew from the first, that he might visit the second also, and the third, and the fourth, and so on unto the 12th. And thus they all received the light of the countenance of their Lord, every man in his hour, and in his time, and in his season, beginning at the first, and so on unto the last, from the last unto the first, and from the first unto the last, every man in his own order, until his hour was finished, even according as his Lord had commanded him, that his Lord might be glorified in him, and he in his Lord, that they all might be glorified. Therefore unto this parable I will liken all these kingdoms, and the inhabitants thereof, every kingdom in its hour, and in its time, and in its season, even according to the decree which God hath made. So this is important. It gives us a little bit of context. Why isn't the Lord always doing, everything that I want him to do? Why is it that sometimes he feels distant? Why is it that sometimes prayers seem to be answered immediately, and others it seems to take time? Well, part of this is gaining an understanding that the Lord is not limited to one place. Every one of his creations will have an opportunity to receive from its king. And the same is true for individuals. Some people will receive the Lord early on in their lives. They may be born with a knowledge of the gospel and understanding how to access it. And others may seek him their entire lives and maybe only find him near the end, or perhaps even in the next life. But everyone that labors on behalf of the Lord will have a time in which they see him. Seek, and ye shall find. It's no wonder our leaders point us to Christ, because whether soon or late, he is the source of all light. He is the only one who can bring us true light and peace, and if we follow him, he will come to us. Okay, let's talk about preparation. There are a few verses here. Let's start in 74 and then go to 78 and 79. And I give unto you, who are the first laborers in this last kingdom, a commandment that you assemble yourselves together, and organize yourselves, and prepare yourselves, and sanctify yourselves, ye purify your hearts, and cleanse your hands and feet before me, that I may make you clean. Teach ye diligently, and my grace shall attend you, that you may be instructed more perfectly in theory, in principle, in doctrine, in the law of the gospel, in all things that pertain unto the kingdom of God, that are expedient for you to understand, of things both in heaven and in the earth, and under the earth, things which have been, things which are, things which must shortly come to pass, things which are at home, things which are abroad, the wars and perplexities of the nations, and the judgments which are on the land, and a knowledge also of countries and of kingdoms. Okay, so here we have some instruction from the Lord, commandments to prepare both spiritually and intellectually. Now, of course, the first thing to prioritize is our spiritual work, but we can become helpful in his kingdom if we are capable of doing many kinds of things. And this includes having skills and secular knowledge even. People who have resources and understanding skills are capable of assisting others in meaningful ways. All right, let's do some more reading. This is verse 119. Organize yourselves, prepare every needful thing, and establish a house, even a house of prayer, a house of fasting, a house of faith, a house of learning, a house of glory, a house of order, a house of God. This, of course, this verse has reference to the temple that would be built in Kirtland. But generally, the temple is vital in this preparation. If we consider what happens at the temple, the entire process of temple worship, temple construction, all things around it, it requires a blend of both spiritual and temporal understanding. Even from ancient times, craftsmen carefully prepared physical works to assist in spiritual aspirations, including the construction of the Ark of the Covenant, the ornate decorations around the pillars of Solomon's temple, the beadwork, the fine veils and the fabrics for those, the colors. All of these things had to be carefully, physically prepared. Even today, choosing beautiful sites, producing high-quality materials and architecture, ensuring budgeting, the financing, and even those who volunteer at open houses to direct traffic. People contribute physical abilities with which they have been prepared to assist in meeting a spiritual goal. And of course, after it's dedicated, the same type of processes apply. When we think about ordinances that occur there, there's a lot that we can't talk about. But it is kind of notable that one of the things associated with the School of the Prophets that is specifically mentioned in section 88 is the washing of feet. Let's read some of these verses, 138 through 141. And ye shall not receive any among you unto this school, save he is clean from the blood of this generation. And he shall be received by the ordinance of the washing of feet. For unto this end was the ordinance of washing the feet instituted. And again, the ordinance of washing feet is to be administered by the president or presiding elder of the church. It is to be commenced with prayer, and after partaking of bread and wine, he is to gird himself according to the pattern given in the 13th chapter of John's testimony concerning me. Amen. So here we have ordinance and ritual combining physical elements, the actual washing, physical performances, combining those physical elements with spiritual understanding, with spiritual learning, and with covenant. All these things remind us that the physical aspects of our life are not bad or even unimportant. We should strive for physical health, beauty, strength, and skill. But all these things are to be used in service of a greater spiritual purpose. Together, physical and spiritual work together and accomplish great things. All right, there's several verses in this section that kind of use similar language to what we see in the book of Revelation regarding the sounding of trumps and some of the events surrounding the second coming of Jesus Christ. We're not going to read all of these, but we'll read a couple of verses, 95 and 96. And there shall be silence in heaven for the space of half an hour, and immediately after shall the curtain of heaven be unfolded, as a scroll is unfolded after it is rolled up, and the face of the Lord shall be unveiled. And the saints that are upon the earth who are alive shall be quickened and be caught up to meet him. So all of these things that are going on, all of these physical performances, it's all leading to something, just like the Lord talked about in his parable toward the beginning of the section. The face of the Lord being unveiled. Everything that has been promised in ancient times will come to pass. Jesus is coming. It is inevitable. Ultimately, it's important to remember Jesus is not just figuratively returning. Like, his teachings will be followed better, or he'll, live on in the hearts of those who believe in him. It's not like that. He will literally reign upon the earth. We can prepare for this great event by developing both physical skills and learning to tie those physical skills into service our spiritual needs. By prioritizing Christ, we benefit from the source of all light and truth. We appreciate all the support for the Word Preacher podcast. Next week, we will look at sections 89 through 92 and discuss a little about the word of wisdom. Of course, there's a ton that we did not cover in section 88. It is absolutely worth studying both individually and with your family. And of course, as always, fight on.